You don't want that. I mean, the only way you win in the league, you can do that and put a great stats in the business, but winning takes everybody getting involved, and that's what we'll probably have to see today for any of these teams. One of these two teams is going to have to be. It's going to have to be a team that the more you try and go out of who you actually are character-wise, more than often the more mistakes you make. Yeah, you're right. The worse off you wind up being. Well, if the Eagles and Giants, so they're trying to get a little bit of momentum here in terms of tonight, don't need to count on these guys who are built for success, presented by Rocket Mortgage. Philly rookie QB Jalen Hurts saw season high in snaps last week. Even quarterbacks. We'll keep an eye on how they use him tonight. Travis Fulgham, TV's guy, never had an NFL catch until 3 weeks ago. So
Hi.
95 yards a game with touchdowns and
You're on mute.
Sean Jackson is back for the first time since week 3. He's made a miracle or two happen in this.
Hi, honey.
Hi. And the G-Men have 3 receiving touchdowns all season.
What?
Try to get psyched.
You're
Yay.
not. Well, the thing is, I think it's just an hour is actually going to go by pretty quick. We won't, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just, it's like, it's really hot here again.
It's hot here too.
It's October 21st, 22nd, and it's 75 degrees here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hot here. I'm not enjoying it at all. If it's going to be dark this early, it needs to make me want to stay inside.
And I'm less yellow. Did you notice? Like I've been working on the lighting. Hopefully I'm a little less yellow tonight.
I think you are.
Yeah, I am definitely.
Your hair looks pretty.
The blue light. Thank you. I needed to go see my hair lady.
My hair lady hasn't come back from the pandemic.
My hair lady washes my hair. That Marisol, who's from some Latin country. I said, "How's your husband?" And I got 25 minutes on how her husband worked for a restaurant for 23 years and helped fix up the restaurant. They sold it and let him go.
Oh.
Like you just hear these stories of these immigrant families and you're like, oh, I don't know how people do it, really. Are you going to be on this call tomorrow morning?
Don't know about a call tomorrow morning.
We're going to do, and I asked Blake to set it up, and I didn't know if you were on the emails because there were so many people on them. For the Connect 4 people.
I'm happy to be on it. Really, it's a podcast thing, and I think
I didn't want you to feel left out. It's only a half an hour.
I think that they sound like really smart, and I'd love to have it on our
site.
site.
Is beautiful. The site for the thing they're doing is beautiful, and I think I'm talking to them at 9:30, and at 10 I'm talking to George Gendron's friend who does what's called the design of mentorship. So I'm going to tell her about it. So I feel like maybe there's a thing there. I don't know where the money is going to come from, but
yeah. Well, that's always the question. Yeah, no, I don't think I need to be on it, and if there's enough people, then it's just confusing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I will stay off of it.
Okay. I'm gonna give I'm not gonna give any kind of long introduction. We're jumping right in.
Yeah, I think really Lawrence should do the introduction. You don't even know Daniel.
No, I'm gonna just set it up and introduce Lawrence and talk about the book for a second, and then let them go off to the races.
Yeah. Yeah, you might want to tell him that's what we're doing, because I didn't give him any sort of like show or anything.
But they're gonna get on in a minute, right? He told me that Daniel's quite shy. Lawrence is not shy. And we got some good people. Eric Heyman's coming, and Scott Bombs is coming.
Yeah.
And Mike Errico is coming.
Yeah.
And if it gets boring, we're just going to unmute those people and let them talk.
Yeah, and but I also think realistically ending a little early tonight, because everybody's going to watch the debate or not. I don't know, but I feel like that was that's on a lot of people's plate. They just want to see what happens.
I know.
The last one was such a train wreck.
I know.
I don't know that I want to watch it, but I might. Well, someone just signed up.
Who? A new person?
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if it tells me in my email. Julie Muncie.
Oh, that's Lawrence's wife.
Oh.
The book, by the way. before he joins.
Mhm.
So badly designed.
Is he good?
No, but he's very hardworking.
Yeah.
Not a great designer. Like, and a really not a great book designer. Sort of like reminds me of
It says, I don't know who this is. Julie Phone. I'm going to assume that might be his
Him.
wife.
or him.
I know, but
But nobody's like waiting in the lobby to get in yet.
no, just Julie's phone.
Let me just
I mean, I
try this.
guess that could be Lawrence.
Is it somebody trying to?
There's Emma Steinhobel. Um, I mean, I guess I should have told them that they need to sign on with their names so that I know to let them in.
You can let Julie in. They live in the same apartment. If it's not her, it's him. And then you could tell them.
Is there not someone else named Julie on there?
Muncie? Is it Julie Muncie?
It just says Julie Phone. I don't know.
Oh, let me
Uh,
text him and see. Sorry. Is that you as Julie waiting to enter to get into the Zoom?
It seems like it's gotten darker in here, and I have the same number of lamps.
It
on.
has gotten, don't you hate when that happens? I don't know how people, yeah. He's not answering. Guess not.
Oh, there's only 2 people. We'll just wait, see what happens.
All right. Mercury's in retrograde. It's all I can say.
I'm telling you, I will just be so glad. I hate to wish away time, but I will be so glad when it's November 4th. I just feel like
I know.
everything is so absorbed by that.
Heller was texting me all day. I'm so anxious. I can't sleep. I should be back in Connecticut. The center of gravity's fallen out of my life. And I'm like,
Okay, there's Daniel. So I'm going to admit him. What do you think? Do you think that's
I
Lawrence on
don't,
Julie's
because he would
phone?
have.
Hello, Daniel. Hi, Daniel. I'm Betsy. This is Jessica.
You're on
She's there
mute.
for me. You're on mute, sorry. Jessica and I are debating whether the person in the waiting room whose name is Julie Phone is actually Lawrence on his wife's phone.
You think so? You're on mute, Daniel.
Ah, there it is. Yes, probably.
I think it is too.
Probably.
Okay, we're gonna,
Should I
we're gonna
admit-
take our
okay.
chances.
I'll let this person in. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
If it's not, we'll dump them. Julie Phone.
I don't know. Rita can't see that person. So
If it's not, we'll just make them talk. Doesn't seem like him.
no, but I can't dump them. So
You can't.
I checked.
I text him too.
not that I need to. I'm just trying to get Lawrence on. I thought that might be him.
Daniel, are you excited about the book?
Yes. Yeah, it's my first book. Yeah, it's such a crazy experience.
First of many, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope. It seems to be selling well, I
Really?
believe. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. So I just let Lawrence in.
Julie, there it is.
So
Nope.
Julie Phone is not Lawrence.
No, Julie, we thought you were on your wife's phone. I mean, Lawrence, we thought you were on your wife's phone. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Hey, Daniel. I was just on a presentation with.
It is Julie.
I'll say hi. Hi,
in the
Julie.
background.
It's safe. It's a Julie we know.
Yes, completely. The funny thing is Dig is really behind me, but if Dig was ever that big behind Julie, that would be really
In my memory, Dig is that big.
yes, in my heart.
In my heart, Dig will always be that big.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm turning off my camera for just a second because I want
Okay.
to wrap up a work thing, but I'll be
I'm
back.
blowing you a kiss, Julie.
Hi there.
Hi.
Well, thank you both for doing this. Before we let the droves of people in, so the ways it's going to work is I'm going to just give a really brief introduction. We're going to go right to it. I'm going to introduce Lawrence. I'm not going to give you a formal introduction. I'm going to, unless you'd like me to.
No.
I think just my friend Lawrence, and who does remarkable work in his remarkable live work studio in Los Angeles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the book. And then I'm going to let you take it away and introduce Daniel. And however you want to do this. We've got an interesting group of people. Mike Errico, who is a singer-songwriter who we had on an earlier studio session, is coming. Scott Baums from Facebook is here. Eric Heyman, forget who else. You are welcome to look at the room and invite those people in to speak. We can do this any way you want. It's small, it's only about 25 people. And we're going to try to wrap it up so people can watch the lovely bark fest known as the debate at 9 o'clock.
Ooh,
We're gonna see how the mute button works.
yes,
Right.
true.
I'm not muting you though.
No, that's all right.
Does
That's
that sound
all right.
good?
Yeah, so to recap, you're going to introduce us. I'll talk about the book. I'll introduce Daniel, but there's no like we can just. Is there any questions or any framework? We're just kind of like open it.
I'm happy to. I mean, we can do it any way you like.
Okay.
Ordinarily, there would be a moderator, and then there would be me, and I would interview the both of you. Since I'm the moderator, I wasn't going to do that, but I can.
Right.
I'm
right.
good at that, and I'm happy to ask questions. So it could be sort of the three of us. What feels like it would be good for you guys? What would you like to do?
After I tell a little bit about the project, it might be good to just have one question, and I think like a really great one for all of us is, including you, Jessica, is this idea of collaboration, creative collaboration. And while it's a book about making music, how does that parallel to the creative spirit as visual communicators and as photographers and as designers? And it's a lot about self-starting.
I'm happy to throw that question to you. The other question I actually have for you is how much you want to talk about the other projects you're doing around this, like the teaching and the thing in London. Do you want to amplify the narrative a little bit around your own work?
I guess for now we could just keep it to mirror sound.
Okay.
Just and perhaps we can get into some of the particular stories with
In that case, I think that's a great idea. I would love to hear, I mean, like, let's ask Daniel, like, who was the hardest person to photograph and who was the person you could have photographed for days. Like, people love those things. Like the anecdotal information about getting closer to these artists, I think would be so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Because I don't want to sit and opine on self here.
So I'll introduce you, you introduce Daniel, and if you want, I'll just say, you can throw it back to me and I'll say, how did the project start? And you can take it away.
Yeah,
Wanna do that?
That'd be perfect. That sounds good. That sounds
We'll
good.
start there. And then if there's a lull in
Okay.
the conversation, I've never been one to leave there too long of a lull in the conversation, as you know.
Yeah. And Eric is a friend. I'm totally cool, like opening it up.
I think these things, particularly now that we're starting to share the mic with our peers, is like to make it whatever you want it to be. If you want it to be formal, it can be formal. If you want it to be informal, but I think with a group this small, it can be more informal, more like a book club kind of thing. Betsy, how are we doing on attendees?
We've got, so I was just looking because someone else just registered. We've got about 4 in the waiting room right now. So I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. It's just 8 o'clock. So,
Okay.
I also brought up Paloma. And like, depending on like how.
Oh, honey,
yeah.
It's
yeah,
8 o'clock
yeah.
here.
Yeah, no, I just like literally left a Zoom meeting from CCA on the decolonialization school. and how they're building an entire branch of the institution.
Oh, wow.
Not just decolonializing CCA, but repatriating. It was very heavy coming out of that and zooming right into here. So
I promise not to be
Seven.
heavy.
that's all right. That's all right.
Nothing heavy about me, particularly 8 o'clock at night when I'm drinking.
Yeah. Instead of repatriation, they were using the word rematriation. It was.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So glad I'm not teaching.
It was good stuff. And then we'll just we'll slide down the scale of down to Trump tonight.
Oof.
Are you watching, Daniel?
Yeah, you might want to open that
I
drink.
do not know. I do not know. Last time we decided to listen to it on our road trip home, on the way, on the last leg of our little road trip, and the debate, and it was brutal. Just audio only was it was very, very rough.
Yeah.
The video
Was
helped.
No less rough with visuals.
Is it not? Okay.
Was that the 18-hour drive?
No, that was a couple hours. It was from Joshua Tree. It was the last bit of it. Still brutal.
I'll crack this.
Daniel,
I also have the book.
Are you in California or are you in New York?
California.
California.
I've been here 1 year exactly, actually.
I went a year ago, but I didn't last. Sadly. I tried,
Yeah.
as Lawrence will tell you.
She made a valiant effort.
I made a
and
valiant effort.
We don't fault her for cutting home. She has a beautiful house in the nature in Connecticut, and she was living a block from City Hall.
Yeah. It was,
So,
I was roughing it a block from City Hall in my tent.
Yeah, it was after seeing. I've never been to Jessica's house there, but after seeing a picture, I was kind of like, "Can we switch?"
Miss it though. I miss the way it was. Anyway, miss the way it was.
Yeah. It's been a weird year to live in a new place.
I bet.
Very
Good for you
odd.
for sticking it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie, Daniel and his girlfriend had Julie and I over on Tuesday for book launch night. We had a lovely socially distanced dinner on their deck overlooking, looking out onto the Silver Lake Hollywood
Oh, how nice.
scene. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And one of the good things about LA when you can go outside. Well, Jessica had chips.
I did on
and
your
palomas
roof.
On my roof, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing burpees on the roof. And
How are we doing, Beth?
Yeah, I think I should let the people
I
that
do
are
too.
here in.
Yeah.
And so are you guys ready? It's not a ton. I think we have 10 people
That's fine.
here. So there more will pile in the next couple of minutes, but let's not make these people wait any longer.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Have fun. I'm going on mute.
I'm
Alright,
gonna
bye.
open it there.
We have a cellist. Look at that. A nice small group. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a very small group. It's going to get a little bit bigger, we think, in the next few minutes. We're going to keep it to an hour because we know that we're just the lead into the big event tonight. But I can assure you that no Russian interference went into the planning of this studio session. I can't speak for my guests, but as far as I'm concerned, from the design observer end of things, we're clear. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk tonight to two friends of ours in California, Lawrence Azerrad, designer, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment, and his friend and collaborator on a wonderful new book just out this week from Pressdale called Mirror Sound that they're going to talk about. And it's a beautiful book, and I think a really beautifully timed book about the people and processes behind self-recorded music. And in this moment where we're all at home, the idea that I think I listen to music all day long, I know many of you do, the question of sound and how we make sound and the sound that's missing from our lives by missing dialogue, by not seeing our friends, kind of makes the whole rationale around space and time and collaboration a sort of an interesting thing to think about. The book is filled with photographs by, I'm going to mispronounce Daniel's name. How do we pronounce Daniel's last name?
Topete?
Topete.
Yeah.
Daniel Topete, who Lawrence will introduce in a moment, wonderful young photographer who collaborated on this book. There are also essays by Lawrence Azerrad and by Spencer Tweedy, who could not join us tonight, and a wonderful introduction by Carrie Brownstein. And I thought rather than try to actually paraphrase her beautiful introduction, I was going to just quote from it, if I may. Because she described this book in a way that makes it really resonant, even if you don't listen to music all day, like some of us do. What she writes in this introduction is the following. She says, this is about the broadcast of selfhood in the form of songs, about inviting people into our small spaces until we realize that the spaces aren't small at all, nor are experiences insular and isolated. These stories are defiantly anti-diminutive, proof that there are giants inside us that with the Regent tools can hurl sounds twice our size upon the landscape. So I thought this was a really wonderful way to introduce the idea that artists make work in spaces together, artists make work in spaces when they're not together. Sound is an international language that unites all of us. And it's a beautiful story of a collaboration between a couple of young artists and designers. And we're really delighted you could all join us tonight to hear Lawrence and Daniel talk about Mirror Sound. So let me introduce my friend Lawrence Azerrad. I had the pleasure last year of living briefly in Los Angeles, wonderful place to be a designer. And Lawrence and his wife, Julie, were my neighbors, and they were very generous to me when I lived there. And so I owe them a lot. Their friendship, their kindness, not easily forgotten, particularly when I was in lockdown and really needed friends. The fact that this book has come out in a pandemic is its own achievement, worthy of incredible gratitude by all of us. And Lawrence, who has won a Grammy Award for his work, works a lot with the music industry and cares deeply as a visual artist and designer about how sound and music are incorporated into our lives. So without further ado, Lawrence, welcome to Studio Sessions. Thank you for making the time, and tell us a little bit about your collaborator.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Jessica, for having us here in Design Observer. It's really awesome and an honor to be here. And thank you to all of you for joining us tonight on such kind of like a momentous and crazy and busy time for Daniel and I to have a chance to share about the book. I'm pretty excited to introduce 1/3 of a very special project. Obviously, Spencer is not with us tonight, Spencer Tweedy, and we'll talk a little bit about his role in forming the project and how he kind of became a glue between Daniel and I. I didn't know Daniel before the project began. And actually, I didn't even meet Daniel until deep into the project. I just saw these kind of photos coming across my desk. It was really Spencer who had the relationship with Daniel. But I'm gonna, at the liberty of embarrassing Daniel a little bit on screen. So as Jessica mentioned, I've been working in the music industry for over 20 years, and in that time have worked with a myriad of photographers, indie superstars, all the way up to the biggest kind of A-list Rolling Stone cover type of photographers. And without a doubt, Daniel is one of the best photographers I've ever worked, mostly because he doesn't really make it about himself rather than capturing the soul and spirit of the people and the nuance of the place so delicately and perfectly. And that's what we felt was really exciting about sharing that in Mirror Sound, because the book is largely a lot about the process of recording and songwriting and making music and the self-initiative to start any type of art that you wish, but you know, how you operate in the space that you make this music is really largely what a lot of the book is all about. And Daniel's photos really capture that so beautifully. So it was kind of difficult editing and choosing and deciding photos to pick, but we found a way to do it. And through the process and through the project, Daniel Spencer and I became much closer. The book itself became kind of an exercise in collaboration, an ideal collaboration, the type of collaboration where the other people in the project make your own work stronger, and you really kind of feed off of each other in a way that's magnanimous and encouraging and hopeful. And Spencer's work took my design perspective to places I didn't really anticipate at the beginning of the project. And then likewise, of course, Daniel's work elevated the project in massive ways.
So it's not your first book, Lawrence, but it's Daniel's first book. And I'd love to hear you tell us a little bit, Daniel, about how the process was for you. And how did you start? How did you begin this project?
Spencer called me one day or he texted me. We met in Chicago years ago at a Twin Peaks show. It was very brief. We kind of kept in touch for years and years. And then he hit me again and asked for me to do this entire book. And at first I thought he was just going to do, I thought I was going to help coordinate and but he ended up having me shoot the entire thing. And yeah, and now how many years later?
How many years?
A year later?
A year later.
Well, we started.
3 years, really?
I came in a little later.
Yeah, it was a 3-year project, I think,
Yeah.
because by the time the idea is germinated and you build out an idea, and Jessica, you've done a lot of books, so you can probably maybe echo this. And then by the time you fortify the proposal gets shopped to publishers. Sometimes that doesn't take right away. And then by the time that, we originally, the publisher passed on Mirror Sound. So there was this process of returning and refining and building. And the whole time we were building our proposals, we were working with photos of Daniel's. But I think that the interesting thing that Spencer, the reason why Spencer was so interested in Daniel is because Daniel had a natural relationship with these bands, and that was important. Funnily enough, the band that Daniel mentioned, Twin Peaks, isn't in the book, but we ended up, we made a real effort to have Twin Peaks is an all-male kind of indie guitar-driven band, and we wanted to have like a really diverse spectrum of artists in the book in the end.
How did you
That's not why we
decide?
didn't.
How did you decide who to include and who not to include? And did that have a impact on your ability to sell the book idea?
We had a whole list of like dream, like Bruce Springsteen, like just every single, we were just grasping like any
That will be volume 2.
Yeah, hopefully second edition, maybe, who knows. Yeah, and then we just whittled down who could contact who we could actually wrangle, and who we actually liked also as artists was very important. Yeah, there were some artists that were really big that we had access to, and we didn't do it. We just we wanted it to be artists that we admired and really loved.
And did you as a photographer feel as you got into their spaces while they were, because the book is really about where they make their work and how they make their work and how they situate their work in some environment that for them becomes a creative incubator of the work. Did you feel that you had to kind of bear witness to them living there? Did you have to spend great amounts of time to capture them in their their unique habitat?
I mean, it's a sensitive place to be. It's like an honor to be invited into anyone's space. And yeah, every time I was there, I had about an hour maybe. And sorry, lost track.
That's all right.
I'm not going to interrupt you because that would be too Trumpian, but yes. So you had about an hour with
But
each
yeah,
person.
yeah, some people were very open. Some people were a little hesitant, but everyone overall was very, very inviting and very open to us.
What
being there.
surprised you the most about being with those people? Was there somebody who was really difficult, or somebody who was really easy, or someone you wish you'd spent more time with?
I mean, Sam Evian invited us to stay the night at his place. And he lived in a cabin in the woods, and it was very tempting. Like he was the sweetest person probably that I've ever met after Spencer Tweedy. But yeah, he was incredible.
Actually, Betsy, if you could enable sharing, I can show some photos while Daniel's talking. But it is weird because this is people's homes, and you are kind of stepping into their most private space, and not only their homes, but like their kind of private artistic sanctuary. On most instances, Daniel was with Spencer, Spencer is the most magnanimous and gracious and wise, gentle person I've ever known and worked with. So still.
But he's also a
disabled.
musician. So did you feel that he was, there was sort of a special language or a secret handshake or some entree that? No, you're saying no.
No,
it's interesting
100%.
though, because so he does speak their language.
Yes, I mean, there were times when he started talking to them and I had no idea what they were talking about. I think Spencer specifically chose me for the project because I'm not a musician, and it wasn't gonna become gear porn, as he calls it, I think. It was more about the people involved instead of it just being equipment based.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that, Jessica, this is something that I know that you've written about as far as ideas kind of, you start at one point and you turn into it deeper and deeper. This originally started as, there's this magazine called Tape Op magazine that Spencer was a fan of, and it's really a hardcore technical journal for like self-recorders. Like it's like one level away from like mechanics on cars, it's that kind of like technical. And Spencer and I, he said, would you want to do a book for Tape Op? And because it's just hardcore musicians and self-recorders love the magazine. And Tape Op actually said no. And then we kind of took the idea further and kind of started expanding the idea from that point. So, and this, by the way, is Sam Avian on his creek, and then Spencer fell into the creek not long after filming this. But it was this type of project where the deeper we went into it, the more kind of complex the topic became, and it started to bloom into this idea about, while it's at its core about recording and making music, it started to echo these other ideas of intuition and self-editing and self-starting and so on and so on.
And I mean, the idea evolved also throughout I remember when I sent this series in, I didn't even really think about this being for the book. I was just he was just showing us around his apartment, his house. And yeah, this was, I didn't think the book was going to be this direction. I was doing like more gear stuff at the beginning, but it kind of it evolved into something else. It became about the people and their spaces instead of just their equipment and how they do it. It wasn't so straightforward and technical.
And that's where the poetry kind of starts to begin, that it's about, where do you take where do artists kind of take a break to rethink artistically. And there's a photo in the book. I don't think I have it in this PDF of just some chairs that are in Ty Seagal's house in Topanga Canyon. And you know, why did I put chairs? You know, because it's just that the idea of the empty space is something that you look at like, oh yeah, that's maybe where I might sit at if I need to take a break. This is the legendary sound artist Suzanne Ciani. I'm sure we would all like to take a break in her backyard.
Incredible house.
Yeah, Daniel, this is probably the best house you've got to go to for this one.
Beautiful house. Yes, this is. Never been in a house like this in my life.
Lawrence, I think it's so helpful to see these images as you both talk.
Yes.
I'd love you to keep going. I do have a question though, which is how far into looking at Daniel's work and making these visits did it take for you to start actually laying the book out? Did you wait until everything was complete or were you already starting to imagine a sequence of images and stories?
That's a great question. I actually had to print out every single photo. You know, we live in a digital world now where designers and practitioners or whatever you're doing is largely kind of constructed out of your digital interface. And to see the context of everything, to see the relationship between the images, and that's really what a book is largely about. Design a photo, an artistic book is about the relationship between the images. I think it's impossible to really do it just in Find View on your Mac Finder. So I had to kind of do this. I mean, I know that this is, a lot of designers do this there's that famous picture of Alexei Berdovich kind of like walking around the magazine spreads with all the things on the floor. But then Spencer's...
It's also about scale too, right? When you're talking about I mean, these are many things, these photographs. They are biographical, they are situational, they are portraits, but they're also portraits of spaces, which makes them architectural photography. Each one is its own narrative, but there's an uber narrative. I mean, there's so many interesting points of entry for a designer creating a visual. I'm speaking with my editorial design hat on, but I think that's the beauty of this is that you see on one hand, you see this sort of grid, this sequence in a grid, but at the same time, each one, I mean, that picture, and I think her house is in Bolinas, right? With the water in the background, the scale is so immense. Her backyard is the ocean. It's, you know, and then of course, how you actually make that its own kind of poetic response to the music. There's so many ways you could do this.
Yeah, and pacing, this pacing of scale obviously is really important. But then there was also Spencer, he would be embarrassed if he was here because Spencer wrote, he's such an incredible writer and has such a, I learned so much, not just about making music, but about the heart of an artist. And I'm an artist myself, but reading, you know, Spencer's text taught me more about my own practice than I thought at the beginning. But it was so the blackboards are everything. And then on the whiteboards, so I obviously, like, you have to track the photos to what Spencer's talking about. So these were like little spreads in here with Spencer's kind of pagination. And then I started to kind of cluster Daniel's photos around what Spencer was writing about. So here, I need to admit someone in. So the whiteboards was really an exercise in kind of making sure that the photos tracked to what was happening editorially. And, you know, I mean, that's just like a functional fundamental of book design. But Daniel's photos were so attractive. It was really, you know, it was like being in a candy store. You know, you want to use everything. And then where do you
There's
use
some really bad
restraint?
ones as well.
Really bad ones. Really? What do you mean?
I sent you some very bad photos, I'm sure.
Well, there's also yeah, go ahead.
I just like, I never knew what direction you wanted to take the book. So I sent a bigger edit than I normally would because it could change the direction of the story that we were telling.
Were you editing together?
No, I would send him, how many photos? 100 per?
Yeah, like 150 is a person. And they were sent. So the shoots weren't done. They were they could be spaced out like by 2 months or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it was
then
like more like a logistical thing.
Yeah. And then there was sometimes when it was like, we would do a little road trip and do a ton of photos. And
Who came
I would
up with the
send-
title?
The title was really Spencer. We really worked hard at getting a better title, but you know, we're just going to be honest that mirror, you know, like an echo, like echoing yourself. You see yourself in a mirror, and sound. It was just like a working title, and then Spencer.
No,
Were
it's a trick question. So it's
Yeah.
a blood sport, the finding of a title, particularly between writers and editors.
Yeah.
I want to actually this is a wonderful question. Brandon Laurie, who's, for those of you who are interested in our Design Observer Cooperative, by the way, Brandon is hosting a lunchtime conversation about design and television next Tuesday. So big shout out to why you should join the cooperative, because this is going to be really interesting a few days before the election to think about, again, like the visual nature of how we get our information and where we work and do the work. Brandon asks, he has an interesting question about discipline, the discipline that comes from independently driven work, and asks if you found that any of the musicians you worked with had any rituals in place, any creative rituals to keep them focused and on track with their work, which is, I think, a really marvelous question, because it speaks to whether you actually had access to them while they were working, or whether they just were sitting in front of their keyboards and instruments and talking to you.
Some we were there for actual recording. Some we were there just kind of them showing us their space. But actually, I have the page open right now to Namdi. He specifically, he's like, he wakes up every day, showers, puts on, like, he's going to work, but he just goes to his basement and makes music all day. But he has like a regimented schedule, which I think is important, probably. I'm sure. Yeah.
Dan Deacon is a meticulous Google Calendar.
Oh yeah.
This is Juan Waters, who did a project where he drove around across Latin America and looked for collaborators on the road trip to make a record
On the street, yeah.
On the street, yeah. But I think that there is a discipline into all the artists that work here, and there is this kind of push and pull between this idea that it is hard work, but then Bob Bruno of Best Coast says that he doesn't ever want it to be painful. It should not stress him out ever. But I noticed in a lot of the text from artists that there was definitely a pushback, this idea that they get to sit at home and make music all day. It's work. It's really hard, and I think as designers, that you all can relate. In fact, Tune Yards, who a husband and wife team were in the book, they mentioned that they would get annoyed when friends say, like, in the middle of the day, hey, you want to go see a movie? You know, just thinking that they just sit around and make music all day. Like, well, they do, but that's actually like their job, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Actually, Bob Bruno specifically, I was sitting on his bed to take this photo. So he literally wakes up and he is in this room that is, if the wider photo is just chaos, like there's more keyboards and more pedals, like every single inch of this room is covered. So yeah, I don't know if he needs a schedule. I think he just wakes up and all his stuff is staring at him and he just starts to make music. I don't know.
That's really interesting.
And that's another, oh, go ahead, Jessica.
No, go ahead.
And that was another point that the thing that Spencer uncovered with a lot of the artists is that the reason why they have these studios and everything's plugged in and usually everything's on is because there's so much work in mounting and unmounting. This is Jonathan Rado's studio, that to have it always there ready to go kind of greases the rails for artistic process, and you don't have to kind of set up stage each time.
That actually is exactly the question that I was going to ask you, which is how did the process of making this book and spending time with these artists, how much did they talk about the difference between thinking, making, recording, capturing, and being a recording artist that also means going on tour and performing, right? So like the question of how, I'm just interested in what happens when you're in your space making the thing, and then the thing has to have another life as an album or as you're out on tour. Like how do you make sense of that? And are these things, these sort of nests, these very private, intimate spaces where most of them live and work, many of them it seems live and work, how does that correspond to the migration of that music?
Wow, that's a really great question. That's a first for me. Daniel, I might ask you to take that. There is, but the way you tee up the question, there's a whole spread that we have in here that writing, recording, and performing are all in one. But the book really is about in the studio ecosystem. Daniel, do you have insight in there?
Sadie from Speedy Ortiz, a lot of her recordings are voice memos on her iPhone, and I think it doesn't necessarily need to be in her space.
That might be volume 2. That's also something that I wish Spencer was here for, because he's performed and performs with his dad.
I mean, I'm also thinking about things like I don't know, people like Esperanza Spalding who just drop what they drop. Like you know, it's her birthday last week. She just dropped this video. But the whole notion that you can drop your work and you can stage your work and you live in a stage, and this sort of the idea that your studio is part of who you are. And as you're talking about the creative process and watching these people and thinking about space, and I'm thinking back to Carrie Brownstein's introduction about, and all of us at home making work sort of seceded from our structural systems and each other. There's something so inspiring to me about the way these people surround themselves with the work, and then the work becomes part of them, and then they find different ways to actually get it out there. And the music industry, of course, you more than anyone know a lot about this, Lawrence, like how it's changed and how the recording industry and the economics of the recording industry have changed. And so they have to do that probably. Maybe that's not really what the book's about, but I think in terms of the space, and the space being this migratory dimensional thing that we can't even see, it's really interesting.
I mean, like Sam, he lives in the woods in a cabin, and I think it really translates to his music. And there's a lot of artists. I mean, I've known some artists that lived in Brooklyn in Bed-Stuy, and they were trying to record music and it just wasn't working for them. And they moved out to Rockaway and were able to make some noise, and they were able to like expand, and their music reflected that space a lot. And I think a lot of people in the book are also on that path. So it's very important.
I want to ask a slightly different question of you, Lawrence, because I think a lot of our friends who have joined us here tonight are designers who are interested maybe in the book part. How you actually started this idea, and how far into it did you get before you pitched the book? Maybe just talk for a minute about what the process was like about getting buy-in from Prestel. I know you've done another book with them, but for people who haven't done books, particularly such a prestigious publisher, it would be lovely to hear you talk for a moment about what that process was like for you.
Well, it was that kernel really evolved from the recording book to this larger kind of meditation on this self-recording process. I think the one feedback that I've gotten from Prestel and editors in general is that you need to have this kind of unique perspective that, I mean, in some cases, sometimes have been criticized for being too niche, but you need to have something, a unique perspective to say, you know, what about, and when it was just generally about bands that self-record, that's when the publisher passed on the idea, because it was just kind of, there was kind of like a, okay, well, what about that is interesting? And I think it's when we were able, and we did have guidance from our editor who really pushed us towards that thesis, is like having a really good faculty advisor, that it became much deeper into the why and the how and the insecurities of it and the challenges of it intellectually, emotionally, and how freedom can be a good thing, but freedom could also be a challenge too. So that's once we started to hook onto those deeper ideas, that's when we started to have more success. We were, I mean, kind of, to be honest, a little foolhardy, where we were like, well, I already have a book, Spencer has a great recording career, and we'll put a lot of cool musicians in a book. And that was just like, no, that's not enough. And then once we did finally get the deal, it was still this evolution of going deeper into the nugget of those stories, of the hidden meaning of what it means to be an artist. And that's kind of where this idea about that a lot of these disciplines, photography, music, design, they're perhaps more similar than we might think. That we all face, we all want to put something good into the world, and we have this desire to face this challenge, to make this work, to share with other people.
Aisha, who's writing from London, where it's the middle of the night, so our hat is off to you, Aisha, for joining us tonight, is, I think, a musician. You can see from her photograph at the bottom of the screen. She asks if most musicians still go to a recording studio when a producer actually can do their work. And I'm wondering, it's a good question, and I'm wondering if you specifically, or Spencer, on behalf of this project, specifically chose what you're calling indie artists who are maybe finding different ways to make their work accessible to others and are not obliging their producers to actually get them in a studio to do the recording. Is that true, or am I just projecting here?
Well, there was a few that were veterans that more chose to work out of this form for the artistic reasons, to have agency over it and not have a. So
Mm-hmm.
this is Emmett Rhodes, who passed away last July, and who he was known as the one-man Beatle, and people couldn't believe that he made this music with such depth as one person. And then certainly Suzanne Ciani, she chooses to work alone, to have that kind of, not have the engineer breathing down you, not have someone else telling you how to make your own music or how to bend your sounds. And then also in a big recording studio, especially the bigger ones, there's that sense that time really is money. You know, like the clock is ticking, and every tick of the clock is serious dollars. But then on the inverse of that, this came out in a lot of the conversations, you know, where do you put guardrails on yourself, and where do you stop, and you know, what kind of boundaries do you put on yourself?
Why a book?
Well, that's a great place to.
I just like, it occurs to me, like, it's sound, it's architecture, it's people. Like, could have been a movie, could have been a Netflix series. Why a book?
Definitely could be a Netflix series, and I think that we can spin that out. Daniel and I will start taking meetings on that next week. But there's something about a book that, especially in this digital age, that is meaningful and tangible, and you go back to it. Before we got on the Zoom, we were talking about some other work I do in the music industry, why I feel that packages are important, because in this world of streaming, when you're reading everything on blogs, when you're listening to music on Spotify, whatever you're reading or whatever you're listening to, it's here and is there and it's gone. It's in your pocket, and that's awesome. You could listen or read anything, anytime, anywhere. But when you actually have the book in your hand or the album that you're listening to, you have a different relationship with the artwork, with the text that you're reading, with the photos that you're looking at. It's more meditative, it's more intentional.
And you beautifully led into Jan's question, which is really a commentary on Daniel's beautiful photographs and how intimate they are, and asks whether there's a kind of relationship between being a guest, being invited into an intimate space, and being a voyeur, and being, particularly, I think, because they are intimate spaces in people's homes in many cases. How did it make you feel during the shoot, Daniel, to be in people's bedrooms around their keyboards and their bed, sitting on the bed, for example?
I thrive in that situation for some reason. I always try and start a shoot, no matter what, like a press, anything I can possibly do to start at someone's home is my favorite kind of shoot. There's like this immediate intimacy. I don't know. There's like right away you just like break down a barrier, and you're just right when they invite you in, you're like, okay, like this is, you have to trust me enough to let me into your home. I don't know. It's.
And Emma has a question about how much equipment. I think your question, Emma, is about the musical equipment, but I'm actually also wondering about Daniel's equipment. When you're shooting at night, you've got lights, you've got an hour with this person to make everything work. Are you just sort of, your eyes are darting around the room trying to figure out how to reverse engineer the photograph you think you want? There's a certain serendipity in that. How did you do that?
I have never been technically good at at photography. I've always just like gone in and figured out everything in the moment. I've always been like run and gun. I don't know. So this was kind of perfect for me. Sometimes when Spencer was there, I would have some time to like explore the space a little bit, and I could do like some like details and get used to where I wanted to have them. And yeah, and just get comfortable there.
What
You know,
was
to
the,
add on to what we were saying about the Daniel starting in people's houses. Daniel and I were hanging out on Tuesday, the night that the book came out, and this photo of Vagabond became the cover photo after, you know, a lot of, you tried so many different images for the cover, but Daniel and I both felt like it was the socks that on Vagabond that you know is, yeah.
Can you tell everybody who she is? I know because you told me, but I think it's a great story. Tell everybody who she is. Anybody who doesn't know. I didn't know. I'm old. Maybe everybody knows who she is.
Daniel, do you want to, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Well, Vagabond is a wonderful singer-songwriter. And like a lot of the artists in the book, she's kind of defies category. She singer-songwriter kind of implies gentle guitar, like, and she's not that. You know, there's a technology in her work. She's first generation American, but her family's from Cameroon. And she has a full degree in engineering science from SUNY in New York. And she was working as an engineer and a computer engineer. And really funny, she started the music on the side, and then she kind of became, she got a record deal, which is kind of like the dream. A great story of Vagabonds is, and she just has a beautiful voice, is that because of her family and her parents being from another country, you know, I think being having a degree in engineering science is what you do. You don't come to America and become a musician. But not only did she become a musician, but she was on the cover of New York Times, either T magazine or New York Times Style magazine. but she had not told her parents that she was a musician or that she had a recording deal or that she was on the New York Times or anything like that. And her mom was at work, and somebody came with the New York Times Magazine to work and said like, hey, this person has the same last name as you. And I just love the idea that she kind of like had this whole secret life as a musician. And then it kind of became, she came out as a musician and is a wonderful artist.
I listened a little bit to her music after you told me that story, Lawrence, and
This is also her.
Catherine's asking how you picked the people to include in the book. And of course, stories like this, probably if you heard this, you'd want to include her in the book, but I'm not sure that that's how it happened. Did you have a list other than Bruce Springsteen? I mean, were there people you didn't get that you wanted to get, people that canceled on you at the last minute? Are there any stories you could share?
We did try really hard for Fiona Apple. Because her last record, I have to just back up that self-recording, even though I've worked in the music industry my whole career, I had to learn from Spencer, what exactly he meant by that. And that literally means someone who like alone presses record and then goes back and engineers and then goes back and like fixes it. And then this kind of like purely self and not working with. So like there were a lot of artists who I thought worked at home, where Spencer said that person doesn't self-record. But then, well, go ahead, Daniel.
Paul McCartney just came out with a record, and I wish we would have known that he was recording the whole thing by himself at home. But I think it was because of quarantine, he recorded an entire album. But yeah.
But by the time quarantine hit, you were already in production.
Yeah. It was already long gone, yeah.
Well, we finished before quarantine, but in Carrie Brownstein's forward, she wrote the forward right after the Grammys last year, and Billie Eilish swept the Grammys, and that record was famously made by her and her brother
in their bedroom. Yeah, no, it was great that you read about that. Who chose Carrie Brownstein to write the foreword, and who reached out to Carrie Brownstein to write the foreword?
Yeah.
Well, you want someone.
And who knew she was such a good writer? Sorry, there's like a whole.
That's gonna be obvious. I mean, she's such a good writer. She's so smart.
But who reached out to her?
She was part of the Wilco ecosystem. So, and that was we don't really like to lean on that so much, but Wilco is a large constellation of artists and people, and if you ever go to Solid Sounds, it's not just about Wilco, but it's about this whole constellation of artists and comedians and photographers and thinkers and writers and a lot of comedians. Weirdly, there's a lot of John Hodgman and Nick Offerman and Fred Armisen. Fred Armisen got his start working for Spencer's mom. So yeah, that came from there. And naturally you want someone with authority to write your foreword.
Right. I was having a conversation recently with Chip Kidd about, I'm thinking about doing a monograph, and he said, well, the whole thing about a monograph is who you get to write the foreword. And I said, like an idiot, I said, really? He said, yeah, like John Updike wrote mine. And I thought, why am I even having this conversation with you? So hats off to you. It wasn't John Updike, but it's pretty close.
On my other book, Terrence Conran wrote that was.
You're very good at this, Lawrence.
The foreword is like
you and Chip Kidd. Clearly, I did not get the memo, but it's a superpower to get somebody. Yes, that's really wonderful.
It was actually the hardest part of the book.
Why?
On Concord, just tracking.
Oh yes, of course.
Terrence.
But you have to do what you have. It's like getting blurbs. Some people think that really matters. So what's the next book project for the two of you? I'm sure you've talked about it, and can you let us in on your secret as we wrap up here?
We definitely feel like we're just getting started.
The Bruce Springsteen book, perhaps? Sorry.
Yeah, Bruce Springsteen. That'd be nice.
I mean, Bruce Springsteen, to be clear, the record Nebraska is, famously self-recorded. And not a lot of people, when they think about The Boss, they think about Hungry Heart and Born in the USA. But, Nebraska is kind of like the penultimate self-recorded, not just technically self-recorded, but this self exposition of self in that record. It's such a beautiful record. But we've had conversations about podcasts. We've had conversations about deeper dives into the whole project. And obviously there's a lot of opportunity for extensions of this, but really our priority, Daniel, Spencer, and I, was to start with a good book. And if anybody has coming out with a book in the middle of a pandemic and the decline of Western civilization is not something that I would recommend doing. So we want to just see how we can continue to bring something nice to the fans. Although I will say that Daniel thinks that there might be word that it's already sold out, like in entirety.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Say more about that.
I got a text from a friend in Chicago, and yeah, and they tried to order it at a bookstore, and it's not available from the distributor. So
Well, hats off to the two of you.
yeah,
An amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's really, I have to
Kudos.
say, Spencer too, and also it's this chorus of incredible artists that shared so much. And
Hey, did you,
Well,
this is a completely old school thought, but did you think about putting a CD in the back?
we did. No,
Did
we
you?
thought about doing a flexi.
Oh,
Yeah,
Record.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, really? Like an old, like a 45?
yeah,
we really did. We really did.
that
But
would've been
before
great.
everybody leaves, I'll copy and paste. I have a Mirror Sound playlist, and I can put that into the
Oh, what a nice little
into
bonus
the,
prize.
into
So
the
in the
chat.
next hour and a half, when you're muting the mute button on the debate, you can play the playlist and calm yourself down.
There we go.
See, I told you it was a great
yeah.
preamble to the debate.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I can't think
Totally.
of any more beautiful way to end this. Thank you all for this lovely, albeit brief, studio session. It was such a pleasure to have you both. And it really, the idea that your book is sold out, I'm genuflecting. If I could genuflect, I would, but I'm a Jewish girl, so I don't do that. Seriously, it's incredibly impressive. And that it came out this week, we're happy to help promote and support in any way we can. This was a little effort to do that. And good luck to you both. Thank you all for joining us.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Jessica, for having us. And
Oh, it's an incredible treat. And please, everybody, buy the book. Out from Prestel. It's called Mirror Sound, and movie rights still available.
all right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.